Welcome to the Sisterhood of Sweat. I am here today with Chantal Brodrick. Chantal is the host of the Fitness Business Podcast. Over the past 5 years, she has spent more than 2,500 hours interviewing fitness business leaders from all around the globe. Prior to hosting the Fitness Business Podcast, she spent 15 years in senior sales and marketing roles in the media industry. She actually has over 250,000 downloads in the fitness business space from 185 podcasts. And I'm super excited to talk to her about something near and dear to my heart today, which is podcasting, because I really believe that you can communicate to your audience in such a real and unique way, because people aren't watching, usually a video, they're listening with their headset. They're probably doing some type of cardio, cleaning, riding in the car. It's a very intimate way to connect with your audience. So I love podcasting so much. I love the message that it brings. I love how you can connect with your audience. And I love meeting super special guests like Chantal. And you guys are going to love her just as much as I did at World Idea Blog Fest. I went with the Sweat Pink group. I got to listen. Well, she wasn't able to talk, but I got to listen all about how she is just a mover and shaker in the fitness industry. And now I have cheated a little and listened to a podcast or two. And I love her voice. She is from Australia. I think it was New South Wales in Australia. And so you guys are going to be mesmerized by her. So welcome her without any further ado to the Sisterhood of Sweat. Welcome, Chantal.
Thank you so much, Linda. What an incredible introduction. I'm so excited to be joining you today.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. And Chantal, it's Monday morning there. Tell them what you've already done and what time you got up this morning.
Okay, so it's Monday morning. We are in the future right now, and it's 8 o'clock on Monday morning. And every Monday morning, I have the amazing opportunity to teach spin. So I teach spin at 6 a.m. every Monday. And as far as I'm concerned, it's the best way to start the week. So I feel very, very lucky. So I am pumped. I am ready to rock for our interview today.
Awesome. Well, one of the first times I actually heard Chantal was because I was doing my research as a podcaster. And one of the things I like to do is I like to get a good feel for my guests. I like to listen to them. If they've been on any podcasts, I like to read what they may have written. I like to go to their website. I like to do my homework so that I have just a good feel for what direction I want to take the podcast, what type of message they can bring to the audience, and how I can connect with them in a greater way. So I was getting ready to have Todd Durkin, who is like the motivator, you guys. He's amazing. He was on a podcast of hers, and I was getting ready to interview him. And I listened back to the podcast like over and over. And so anyway, you could go back and you could listen to her podcast with him. You could listen to mine with him. Podcasts last forever. Some of my oldest podcasts are still getting downloads. Do you find that to be true?
Absolutely. So I'll tell you an interesting story. So we've been producing the Fitness Business Podcast as a weekly show for 3 years. And prior to that, it was a monthly show. So we weren't kind of doing it as a business. It was really just more fun to start off with. And I constantly check the downloads all the time. And it blows my mind that we are now up to show 182 this week. And we are still getting downloads from like show 15 and show 19. And it's unbelievable. And one of the things that I love about this and my sponsors love is that they get value forever. The guests get exposure for year on year on year. We get to continue to educate fitness professionals constantly. And our sponsors get their message heard year after year. So it's a pretty incredible medium.
How did you get started, first of all, into fitness? Let me hear that backstory.
Yeah, really good question. So I'll kind of give you the brief background. So I was one of these kids that grew up very inactive. I did not like exercise. I did not like sport. In fact, I would do everything possible to avoid it. And then I think and I was a really overweight teenager. So by age around 16, I weighed 85 kilos. Now, I don't know what that is in pounds. I'll have to do
I
a quick.
don't either.
I'll have to calculate.
My
But anyway,
husband would, who is listening. He is the
right.
engineer.
He's probably just done the calculation in his head. But anyway, so I was very overweight teenager, and at around age 20 or around age 19 or 20, I got my first taste of exercise and of the gym, and I fell in love. I absolutely fell in love with it. And I started group fitness classes, attending group fitness classes. And between the ages of about 19 and 21, I became addicted to group exercise. In particular, body pump was just my love. And I would go along and follow this one particular instructor, and she was incredible. And she was one of the Les Mills trainers at the time. And she was my inspiration to get into fitness. So I actually started my career in the media industry, and I spent 15 years in media before I even transitioned into fitness. Fitness was a passion before it was a business for me. And I loved attending those classes so much that I thought to myself, I want to become a body pump instructor. And so I was one of these people that went from the front row of class to then teaching the class. And after I had gotten we call it certificate 3 here. I don't know if it's the same over there. After I got my cert 3, which enabled me to then do my instructor training, I loved it so much that I thought, I want to be a personal trainer. So I went on to do my instructing as a personal trainer, and I got certified as a personal trainer. I probably spent 12 months doing PT. And then something happened where all of a sudden I realized that whilst I loved the personal training, I missed the business side. And it kind of all happened that at that time, as I was thinking, I love the personal training, but I miss the business. A friend of mine said to me, hey, I actually need a business coach for personal trainers. What do you think? And that's when I started to transition out of media and into fitness. So this is even before the podcast started. So I spent my first couple of years in the fitness industry as a business coach for personal trainers. And then it went from there.
I love that. I love how you've evolved. We have such similar stories
Oh,
too.
really?
Yeah, just how I got started into fitness, and it was around the same age as you. Um, like I think it was just a little like sooner. I was around 18, and I actually went to like a little fitness boutique, and but it had a sauna, it had a steam room, a whirlpool, a swimming pool, weights, but it also had these weird things that you may see if you ever look back to see what people used to work out on, like belts that would like
Oh, yeah. I've
shake
seen
you,
those.
and rollers to, I guess, beat the fat off, literally. But it's a good thing we've evolved a little since then. But I just remember there was this. She was a redhead. I cannot remember her name, but I went to school with her son Ken, and she was ripped, you guys. Like I was just like, I idolize this woman. When I'm her age, I want to look just like that. That's what I'm looking for. And so I fell in love with fitness. I would go for a couple hours. I would work out. I would get in the steam room, sauna, swim, all of it. So I also was an overweight teenager too. And then I found, oh, working out, eating right, you know, that's the secret, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's kind of fun to have similar backgrounds. And I really want to dive into the whole podcasting thing because a lot of people out there listen to podcasts and maybe curious about how they could start one. Maybe they want to start one and they have like no idea how, or they don't even know how to listen to a podcast. So how did you start down the whole path of podcasting, first of all?
Yeah, thank you so much because I love answering this question because I think it's important to know that everybody starts somewhere. And whilst now this is something that I do full time, which isn't that common to podcast full time, when we initially launched the Fitness Business Podcast, it was simply as another way to help fitness professionals just increase their professional development. It was another tool. So if you think about writing blog posts or writing articles or producing videos or going out and doing presentations, initially the podcast was just that. It was saying, okay, here's another content piece. And trying to deliver a professional piece of or a piece of professional development for personal trainers and for the fitness industry. So early on, it was just that. There wasn't any monetization behind it. There wasn't any grand plans to take over the fitness business world. So really early days, it was just monthly. So once a month, I would chat to a local Australian business person and put it into like a 1 hour show. I think it was in those days. This was 5 years ago, and put it out on the website. It was no putting it on iTunes or Stitcher or Spotify or anything like that. It was just uploading it onto the website and maybe onto Facebook at that stage. Then after doing that for 2 years, Justin Tamsett, who's the owner of Active Management, who's the owner of the Fitness Business Podcast, he came to me and said, you know what, Chantal, what do you think about turning this into a weekly show? And initially I freaked out because, Linda, you know how much work is involved in actually producing a podcast. And then I thought, why not? Let's give it a go. Nobody else was doing it at the time. Like, it was pretty rare. And there are now a couple of other fitness-based business podcasts on the market. And there are lots of, obviously, fitness-based podcasts on the market. And so I went, yep, let's give it a go. So we kicked off the Fitness Business Podcast as a weekly show, which was really exciting. And then things started to gain momentum because we were able to put a whole lot of systems in place. We were able to plan forward. We were able to then extend out to an international market. And for an Australian-based show to extend into the US, that was key for us. So that kind of really made a really big difference in our progression and our timeline. But going back to what you were talking about, and I just want to reiterate this because you mentioned it earlier, Linda, and that is the power of podcasting. You saw me speak or not speak, so to say, in at Ideal World Convention at Blogfest. And one of the things that I'm a huge advocate for is just what a powerful medium this is. And as you said earlier, you know, the beauty of a podcast is this: your own personal voice. There is nothing more powerful than that. And to be able to connect into the ears of your community, your listeners, the people that follow you, the people that are inspired by you, that is such an incredibly special connection. And podcasting is the only medium that can do that. Video is amazing and written word is amazing, but podcast is so personal. And so it's quite incredible because I now speak all over the world, and I will have people come up to me and maybe not recognize my face, but they'll overhear my voice and they'll say, "Oh, are you from the Fitness Business Podcast?" Now, fair enough, I do have quite a unique accent. I do get that. But it's quite amazing the connection that you form with your listeners. And that's why I now really encourage fitness professionals to consider podcasting as part of their media mix. You know, because there is so much competition on social media. Everyone's producing videos these days. But if you really want to connect to your audience and to your community, then podcasting is an incredible medium to do that. And you can actually do it at a relatively low cost. You don't have to spend a fortune to get up and running, right? You can do it quite inexpensively. Mm-hmm. You can produce it yourself if you want to. You don't need to outsource. So it's just such a beautiful way that you can really start to extend your message to your community. And the other thing, Linda, that I love about it is that it is a truly international medium.
You know, oh my gosh. I know. I was like in shock when I was looking, because I use Libsyn. So I was looking at Libsyn.com and I was like looking at the graphs and I'm like, okay, people are listening to me in Japan and Hong Kong and Canada and Mongolia. Like, I'm like all over. I'm like,
isn't it the most amazing thing? So
your message in Europe really loved me.
Yeah. And this is why I always say, especially for those personal trainers out there that have an online option, or if they're selling books or DVDs, or, they offer online personal training, then start podcasting. Because imagine if your message is being heard in Canada or Switzerland or Australia, and you actually have an online product that you can sell to those people. So I love the opportunities that podcasts open up, not only for extending your message, but also it can lead to product sales. It can lead to new clients.
And like when I'm in the gym and I'm training and I'm coaching, I'm all about getting the results and fitness and driving the bus. So for me, I love this because I get to connect with the mindset, which is much more powerful than anything I could ever do, even in the gym, I believe. So I think that's where it all starts is in the mindset, the motivation, the attitude. So I can connect on a more powerful level because I'm not running at the speed of light, a million miles an hour, doing 250 bucks jumps and bear crawling down the turf. I'm actually slowing down, having a message with powerful game changers like you. How do you feel about what you're doing with your message, and what is your message that you want to bring to everyone out there?
Yeah, I love that question, Linda. And I just want to add something to what you just said, because this is so important for fitness professionals. And this is every single fitness professional faces the challenge that whilst you are training your client or your group fitness class, whatever it might be, you have their undivided attention. You have that time with them, that one-on-one time or that group time, one-on-one. What we all fear is what happens when they walk out of the gym. How do you stay connected to them in the times that they're not actually there training with you? And podcasting is a way that you can do that. And you just touched on it then, and I'll answer your question in just a second. But I want everyone to understand just how special this is, that your client can walk out of the gym and perhaps they only see you once or twice a week for a personal training session, but you can continue to connect with them and continue to share your message and continue to motivate them and inspire them and share information about food and exercise technique and recovery and stretch and all that type of stuff. You can do that outside of those times. So they feel like they might only be paying to see you once a week, but they've got a personal trainer with them 24/7. And that's an amazing feeling. So that's really cool. So I just wanted to touch on that quickly.
I love that. I love that. You're helping them more. They're able to hear your voice and you're you're with them. Like, 2 hours is not that much out of the week. So you're going to make a greater impact having a podcast that could motivate, that they could pull up anytime they're in need of hearing what you just said. They can
Yes.
replay that again.
Yes. And Linda, that brings me to another really important thing. And that is people get bogged down in this idea that a podcast has to be 30 minutes or an hour or whatever. It doesn't. You
No,
can jump online and do a 10-minute podcast. You might wake up one morning as a personal trainer and just feel really down and really sluggish and just have to do something to motivate yourself to get your butt into the gym that day. Well, you know what? Your clients probably feel that all the time. So jump on and do a 10-minute broadcast about what the things are that you did. What is that ritual that you did to get out of bed and get yourself into the gym that day? So podcasting, whilst I absolutely recommend that you do have consistency in your schedule and in your planning, and Linda, you would have seen what I talk about in relation to that, it doesn't mean that you can't do little mini broadcasts now and then as just another way to connect with your market. So just keep that in mind, that it can
well,
be.
thanks for that inspiration. I am going to actually get on Friday, you guys. I've only done one other. I'm going to be brave and I'm
Be
going to
brave.
show you what's truly inside here when I'm getting motivated. And I got to tell you, somebody out there named Todd Durkin has the hoodie, and I think it was called Embracing the Grind. I
Mm-hmm.
believe that's the one I listened to right before Fitness America or Fitness Universe just a couple weeks ago. I have a fully torn hamstring. At the time, I didn't know it was fully torn. I just knew it hurt like hell. And and I got misinformation from the ER. So I had decided, well, if they don't tell me it's ripped from the bone or that it's torn, I'm gonna compete. I'm here. I've put all this work in. It was like the day or so before, and I went to cryotherapy. I was listening to his podcast over and over. How bad do you want it? Embrace the grind. I got into that whole mindset. And so it's powerful. It was powerful for me. I pulled off second place in Masters Bikini and third place in Open Fitness, which is 18 years on up. So I'm thrilled.
Amazing.
I'm thrilled with the placing. I got
Oh,
through it with actually I have barely any hamstring left. It's just hanging by a thread. I don't know how I did it, but I did it. It was mindset. What am I saying? I don't know how I did it. I embraced the grind, the grit. It was already torn. I mean, my goodness. And I just used my mindset to get through it. So I think that it's powerful what you put in your mind, like the mindset of don't push yourself to that point. I'm not saying, oh yeah, let's but like it's just you could get through almost anything if you're putting the right things in your brain, like, things that motivate, encourage, and inspire you.
and Linda, to your point, I think that's a really key thing to think about because as fitness professionals, we quite often deal with those type of things in our own way, and we find that inner strength and we find that way to push on and teach a class when we don't feel like teaching a class or get in front of a client and do a PT session. But I think we take that for granted sometimes. So what I encourage everyone out there to do is rather than keep that goal to yourself, they're the things that you share with your client because yes, it's personal, but it's also authentic. And it's actually really healthy for them to realize that you're not always going to be switched on 24/7. You're not always that perky kind of person that they think that you are, because everyone has their ups and downs. So I really do encourage you that, if you do go down this path of doing a video series or doing a YouTube series or doing a podcast, then think about those moments, sharing those with your clients, because I promise you they are the moments that will connect you more than anything
Oh,
else that
for
you do.
sure, for sure. Just being real, being vulnerable, sharing your message. Usually it's the ones that you're the most afraid to share that
Yeah.
connect you the most.
100%, 100%. And Linda, you had asked me previously about what my driver is and what my why is, why I do all of this. And the reason that I do what I do, and just I should just share it with everyone quickly. So the Fitness Business Podcast, our primary objective is to share every single week. So we release every single Wednesday on iTunes, 30 minutes of business-based information, education, or inspiration that will help fitness professionals become better at what they do. So it will help them become better business people. It will help them run better social media accounts. It will help them with their finances, their marketing, their sales, everything or every component that is involved in being a business owner, being a sole trader, running your own personal training business, running your own small studio or gym. That is the content that we focus on. So the reason that I do what I do and I pour every ounce of my energy into it is because I know that overall in the entire world, we are in need of fitness professionals to be more successful so they can stay in the industry for longer. They can be profitable, because if we can get fitness professionals in the industry for a longer amount of time, then they can help the people that really need the help. They can help the people that are facing chronic health issues, that are facing weight-based issues, that are inactive, that are sedentary, and really you guys out there that are listening to this, people like you, Linda, you are the ones that are so important because you are helping those people. So from my point of view, I have the amazing opportunity to speak to business-based experts out there. And I feel like it's my job to pay that information forward to help all of you out there so that you can do the most important job, which is changing lives. So that's why I do what I do.
Yes, I love that. You knocked that one out of the park. I cannot wait to tune into more of your podcast because I was looking at it and I was like, this is great stuff. I'm getting ready to enlarge my studio into a fitness boutique for women. So
Amazing.
I'll be going on and checking out all of your business tips because, nobody else does it. I mean, like,
That, yeah.
it's
And
almost
that's,
like you learn raw and real on the job, and that's
yeah.
not the best way to learn. It's better to learn from somebody that's been there, done that, and come out on top.
Yes. Yeah.
So I'm
Absolutely.
really excited about tuning into that. What are 5 tips for anyone out there that's interested in starting a podcast and they're at ground zero?
Oh, I love this one. Okay, so tip number one is tune into my YouTube series, which is all about how to start your very own podcast. So basically, I've produced it was a 9-part series. We did the whole thing on Facebook Live. It's very kind of casual and easygoing. But basically, in that series, I actually step you through from day one, from like, I'm thinking about doing a podcast. Should I do a podcast? Some of the stats around podcasting through to actually choosing your topic, which is really important. It's so important that you nail that topic. And so I take you through an exercise on what you can do to make sure that that topic isn't just a passion for you, but it's also sustainable. Because as you'll know, Linda, it's one thing to be passionate about something, but it's something else to have enough content to produce a show week after week after week, and not run out of ideas. So we talk about that and talk about finding your target market, your avatar, and then we go through a whole lot of systems, a toolkit. So what type of equipment do you need to get started? We talk about Libsyn. How do you upload onto Libsyn? So pretty much if you want to get started with a podcast, that is a really good place. And Linda, I'll send you through the link. You can always just go to YouTube and search for Fitness Business Podcast, and you'll see a playlist there, which is actually called How to Start Your Own Podcast. So that's number one. The other things that I would do is it's important to get feedback from your current market, from your current community, because they are the source that so much of your content will actually build from. So I'm going to guess that chances are, if you're watching this show right now, you're watching it because you're getting inspired by Linda's show. You watch what she's doing. What you need to do is you need to go out there and chat to your current client base. So it doesn't matter if there's 3 of them or if there's 300 of them. Chat to them and ask them what they want to know about. What can you find out? What can you help them with? Because understanding that market, understanding their pain points is going to give you the fuel that you need to start to develop content. And this goes for whether you're developing a podcast or you're developing a video series, Facebook Live series, YouTube Live series, doesn't matter. Just constantly seek feedback from your audience, from your market, from day one and
Yeah,
forevermore after
because you
that.
don't want to create a product that no one needs or wants, right?
Absolutely. And
Then
it's,
you're wasting your time and spinning your wheels.
that's so right, Linda. And we get caught up because we get passionate about something and we think, oh, well, if I'm passionate about it, then everyone will want to know about it. But it's not always the case. So we have to find that point where our passion actually meets a sustainable interest. Okay, so it's passion and sustainable interest. And so that forms some of that groundwork that you have to do early on, because you might set out all enthusiastic and produce your first 6 shows. But let me tell you this, most podcasts don't last past about 2 months or about 7 shows in total. You don't want to be that statistic, because as you will know, Linda, consistency is one of the absolute keys to getting known, to building your brand, and to establishing your business. So, you don't, I can't think of what the quote is. I put a quote up on Instagram the other day, but it was around the idea that, hang on, I've got to find it. I've got to find it for you because it's such a
It's
good quote.
consistency and adding
I
that
want to
value too.
share it
Like
with you.
when people start repeating back to you things they heard on your podcast or just reaching out on
Just
social
got
media,
to,
you know you're getting a reaction.
absolutely. So I want everyone to take this quote: punch perfectionism in the face. Done
Ooh.
is better than perfect.
Say
And what
that
I love
again
about
because
that
we're
quote,
going to
Linda,
have
is
to edit
yes, we
because
all
you
want to
cut
strive for the
out.
very best. Okay, so Okay. So the quote is punch perfectionism in the face. Done is better than perfect.
Ooh,
Okay.
I love
So,
it. That's my
yes.
motto. I'm
So
sticking to
isn't
it.
that brilliant? Because how often as professionals do we put things off because we kind of go, oh, it's not quite right. It's not quite perfect. I'm guilty of this. So I've had my book idea in here for ages and I'm like, oh, not quite there, not quite. I'm like, you know what? Just do it. If you want to start that podcast series, just do it. If you want to get onto video, just do it. I promise
You
you
learn
that if
as you go, guys.
you learn as you go. And
You
if
just
you look
learn.
back, like if I look back 3 years to some of my early podcasts, yeah, they're not amazing. They're a bit embarrassing, but you know what? Had I not gotten started back there and just learned along the way, that I wouldn't be where I am now. And I guarantee we're all in the same boat. So that whole procrastination thing drives me crazy. So I love that quote because I think it's something that we can all really think about when it comes to those projects that we want to get up and running.
And it's so true. It's so true that getting started is the most important part. You could be in overwhelm and just stuck forever. Like, for me, when I first started, I was researching the hell out of it. I was listening to Lewis Howes, Lori Harder. I listened to yours. I listened to all these podcasts and became the biggest podcast junkie. And
Yes.
because I love motivation, it fills my cup so that I can bring it to everybody at boot camp, my studio. So I literally listened and then I got stuck in, I wasn't like them. Like
Mm.
one of them was sort of like a spiritual guru. The other was like your neighborhood best friend. I mean, it was just, I was like, well, I'm not a spiritual guru. But then I realized, and I thought, who am I to do this to? I was stuck in that whole imposter syndrome. And then I realized it's, I'm not going to be able to reach the people that I need to reach with what only I can bring. See, I have certain people I can reach that you may not reach, and vice versa. You have people that you're going to reach that I may not reach. So it's all about just stepping out there and getting started because there's people waiting on you, daggone it, to help them.
Yes, exactly. And we all underestimate how valuable the knowledge and experience is that we have. But you know what? You
Right.
you just ask one of your clients how much they value the information they share with you, and it is so important to them. So that's why I think finding that niche, finding your unique point of difference is so important. And I love what you just said about the fact that before you set out, you immersed yourself in this medium. You took the time to listen to other podcasters, to learn what was out there and learn what people were doing, but then you created something that was your own, you know, and I think
Yeah.
that is just beautiful. That's what this is all about.
Well, and absolutely, because then it's authenticity and people relate more to, I don't think sugarcoating, I think truth telling. I think being straightforward and honest. And also, I think your podcast is a little different than mine. Yours is very, like, I think information. You're
Yes.
bringing us information where we're learning something every time. Like, I'm learning, how to do something that I think mine's more motivation, inspiration, a person's story, and also it's informational, but like you could have all sorts of different types of podcasts.
Yes, 100%. And that's one of the things that I always say to people is when you set out, think about what you want to do. What's your primary objective? Do you want to inform? Do you want to educate? Do you want to entertain? Do you want to motivate? Like you really need to think about that. And that's when actually having an outline, a structure of your podcast format becomes really, really important. And I always suggest that you actually do forward plan because you can absolutely have like a casual conversation, and that can be incredibly entertaining. And I think if you've got If you're more on the entertainment side, there are some podcasts that are storytelling, or as you say, like a really motivational, inspirational. And then for me, being that it's a business based and information based, the structure is incredibly important, because you need to build a familiarity with people, that they know that in the first 60 seconds, they're going to have a brief introduction. They're going to learn about who the guest is. But then for 15 minutes after that, they're going to get a solid amount of information. Then there's going to be a summary, a wrap up, an outro, and it's gone. So I think if you're setting out to create a information based podcast or video, then that's really important to have that structure. I think if you have got more of a motivational, inspirational, entertainment based show, then structure is important, but I don't think you need to be quite as set in your ways as what a business based podcast is.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. What do you do when you get a guest that you're not clicking with and it's just not flowing? What's some tips there?
Oh my goodness. Okay. I have, it doesn't happen often. It doesn't happen
No,
often, but
no,
it has
but if it
happened a couple
does,
of
but
times.
it's not
It's a
often.
really good question. It has happened a couple of times throughout the year, and throughout the years. And so the first thing that I would say, if you are someone that is going to be hosting or interviewing, or having a guest on your show, then knowing as much information as possible about that guest makes all the difference in being able to build rapport.
Truly.
Now, there are certain people that do this more naturally than
They just
others.
have a gift for it.
Yes, for example, authors. Authors have an amazing ability to connect with their interviewer. And I think the reason that is because they get so used to doing podcast interviews when they're launching a book. So I absolutely
It's
adore
their
interviews.
experience.
It's their experience. They are very conversational. They flow really easily. And then there's some people that will be nervous, that won't have done their research. It drives me crazy if they haven't even looked at the show. So if I invite a guest on and they haven't even listened to an episode, I know straight away, because they just don't have any knowledge about the show or the history or what we're all about, because they're so focused on themselves. So in answer to your question, what do I do if someone's like, I let them. I've had a few absolute corkers in my
I
time.
was well prepared, thank God.
Yeah. So
I was
it's
well prepared
you were,
because,
you
and I
were.
didn't let it show, but oh my goodness,
Okay,
only a
if
couple.
I have just a complete roadblock with someone, what I try and do is I try and be as quiet as possible. So I'll get the ball rolling and let them talk, because people are exceptionally good at talking about themselves or their craft or their specialty. So
Yeah.
if there is a lack of rapport between the interviewer and the interviewee, then in my experience, the best bet is to kind of set them off and let them run, as opposed to someone that you have great rapport with. And I think our conversation today is a really great example of that, where you can bounce off each other and you've got questions come in from the side, and then like it's much more dynamic.
Yeah.
Whereas if someone really, I even do it with people that, I'll give you a great example. And it's not that he was hard to interview. It's just that I was very conscious that he is incredibly important and incredibly time poor. I just interviewed Ryan Holiday.
I
And
saw that. Yeah. And I
yeah,
heard him
and
also on Lewis Howes' podcast.
right,
Love
correct. So
that.
if anyone doesn't know Ryan Holiday, he's an exceptional author. He just amazing guy, very high achiever. And I went into that interview thinking, I must be respectful of his time. I must be respectful of his position. I had studied everything. I'd read his books, And so in that circumstance, I very much kept to the script. So I was very much, here's the question, let him answer. Here's the question, let him answer, as opposed to kind of making it a bit more dynamic. So hopefully that answers your question in
That
a
makes sense to
roundabout
me.
way.
I
Yeah.
think you nailed it with being very prepared, and then also letting them talk. I think that's huge. You're not going to click with every single guest you ever ask on, but the biggest thing I found was Are they in alignment with your message and what you're trying to bring to your audience? That is one of the criteria to whether you bring them on your show.
Yeah. Yeah. And for me, I always think back to that why. So why is it that I do what I do? And so it's absolutely, so I've recorded probably for the next 3 months. So I record a long way out in advance. We have people constantly coming, wanting to be guests on the show, but I had to knock away so many people because I have to take it through a filter, which is, do you have the experience that you will add value to my audience? So, are you going to help them be a better, more successful, or more profitable fitness professional? Because the answer is, if the answer is no, then I don't have, you're not the right fit for the show. Because there are so many amazing experts out there that we want to bring to our audience. We want to connect to our market. So, as a host of a podcast, you need to be you need to think about what you're exposing your audience to, because that comes back on you. So if I
Right,
put
right.
someone on the show that isn't adding value, then that's going to reflect badly on me as the host, on my personal brand, and on the business brand. So you need to think about that as well.
And I think there's no harm if it didn't turn out the way you wanted it to, not to air it.
I
Maybe go
agree.
back and revisit it, or
I totally agree. I have cut interviews for sure. For sure. I completely agree. And at the same time, I should also say, and other people say this to me, not every show is going to be an absolute like 10 out of 10 as well. You're going to have ebbs and flows, and some of them are going to be like, we released a show last week, which was on how to create your social media strategy for fitness professionals. It did like 1,000 downloads in the first couple of days. It absolutely went
it's not
off.
always the one you think it's going to be great
It's
that
not always
everyone
the
can
one. And then
relate
there's
to.
some that you like, you think are just amazing because you've had great rapport, you've got great information, and they don't necessarily rate as high as what you might anticipate. So you also need to become comfortable with the fact that you have good weeks and you have bad weeks. It's normal.
I think it's also, I used to at the beginning think it was only like, I don't know, I have to get great guests. I have to get great guests. And I had so many great guests, but it isn't because they're a great guest. It's the topic. First of all, it's the title. It's
Yeah.
the title that draws the people into the podcast.
Yes.
And then it's the topic, like what did we talk about? Did we add value? Then it's the guest.
Yeah.
Although, sometimes it could be the guest.
Sometimes the guest. I'll
Yeah.
tell you a really, really quick story, but it's worthwhile. So I've just said to you like how important our topics are and our guests are, and we're all about business. And in about year one of the Fitness Business Podcast, JT came to me and he said, you know what? I think you should do a show on sleep. And I'm like, sleep? What has that got to do with running a business? Like, no, we're not doing that. We're not
Everything.
interviewing that guest. It's totally off topic, right? And I'm like, come on, we talk about social media and marketing and sales, and why am I going to do it? Anyway, he convinced me to do this show about sleep. And we got this person in who was an expert on sleep. And she talked about the effect that sleep has on all parts of our lives,
On
on our
everything,
on our
everything.
energy, on all that. Can I tell you, this show absolutely rated like crazy. People loved this show on sleep, and it's still our same audience. It's still our same target market. We're still about business, but every so often you need to take a chance, look at things that are a little bit out of the ordinary, and you might be surprised by what people want to hear about.
Well, I have to say, one of my top podcasts, I remember before I went on, I was like, how am I going to talk for an hour on fish oil? Like,
Yeah.
I love fish oil. That's one of my top five supplements, but how am I going to talk about it for an hour? Oh my gosh, you guys, that was one of the best podcasts and most downloaded because we not only talked about fish oil, we talked about digestive enzymes, we talked about CBD oil, which, is your hemp oil. Um, it was just off the charts. Like the downloads were
It's
ridiculous.
crazy.
And
You
so,
can't pick it sometimes.
yeah, I'm just like, it's so funny too when you listen back to some podcasts. Like before you listen back, you think, oh my gosh, I think that I think that wasn't good. Or,
Yes.
you can't, you're listening to your guests, you're asking questions, you don't really hear what you're saying. And then when you listen back, you're like, that's the best podcast I ever did.
100%. I agree. I agree. It shocks you sometimes.
Oh my gosh. So that's just part of podcasting, and you just get better and better as you go. Now, if you're going to do an interview style like I do, like Chantal does, what do you do to get great guests? Because it is important to have a good guest.
Yeah, I totally agree. So the first thing is I'll take that back a few steps, because the first thing that I do is I find out what our audience want to hear about, because that's number one. Because it's quite easy to go and get guests that are known or that you've heard about in the market. Like, you can go for the person, but what I've learned, oh, and we did that for the first couple of years, but what I've learned is more important is to go for the topic and then find the person that is an expert on that topic. So the first thing that we do is we listen to the audience. We listen to what is popular. We know that from a fitness professional perspective, shows that are always going to be popular are sales, retention, leadership. So there are certain topics that we know, social media, that are always going to rate really well, but then we need to dive a little bit deeper. So what we do is we, on a regular basis, put a survey out to all of our listeners and say, hey, if you could find out about any three topics, what would they be? Or if you could ask any three questions, what would they be? The other thing, and I'll get on to answering your question in a minute, but the other thing that has been really important for me is building my personal brand so that I have a direct communication with a lot of the listeners. So for me, Instagram is my platform of choice. And quite often they will come to me with questions. So they say, I wanted to know about small group training in a club, for example. And I'll either be able to share a show with them that we've already done, or I'll be able to think, okay, I wonder if this is a topic that more people want to know about, because generally if one person wants to know, there's going to be a few people out there that are interested. I can bounce it off some other listeners and then go about actually choosing the topic. So in answer to your question, how do we find great guests, or how do we find guests that will talk on the topic that we want? A few different ways. So I am a absolutely obsessive learner myself. So I read all the time. I use Audible. As a matter of fact, I don't read, I listen to all of my books. And I'm also a podcast addict. So I have kind of a range of business-based podcasts that I listen to obsessively. And quite often I will hear guests on those shows. So you might have heard we had like Michael Stelzner on the show. We've had Amanda Bond on the show, Sue B. Zimmerman. So quite often I will actually have heard someone talk about a particular topic on a podcast that I've listened to. And so when it comes up that someone goes, oh, we really need to know about Instagram strategy, then I can go, oh, you know what? I heard Sue Zimmerman talking about that on social media marketing podcast. I'll try and reach out to her and get her on the show. So quite often it's just based on people that I've heard speak. It's authors when we have the opportunity, because as I mentioned, authors are just incredible and they are generally experts on a particular topic and they're amazing to interview. We look to conferences. So we have a look at Idea World and Ursa and Philex and FitX, and we see who the speakers are at those conferences, because that's quite often a key for getting business-based speakers. And then we can just reach out randomly. So sometimes it's like through LinkedIn, it's just through doing a Google search. We just 2 weeks ago released what we call an intensive show, which is a step-by-step guide on how to start your own YouTube channel. Now, in that case, we were like, okay, who do we go to? Who's a YouTube expert? So we started Googling and we found
a few, actually.
Well, yeah. So then you go, well, who do you choose? Because if you come up with 20 different
The one you
YouTube
resonate with, I guess.
Yeah. So then what we did is we found, so Sean Cannell, who ended up coming up in the show, ranked really, really highly in terms of his expertise. And then what I do is, because as you'll know, Linda, actually hearing someone's voice before you interview them is kind of important. Because if someone isn't confident on the microphone, they don't speak clearly, they don't articulate well, it could make or break an episode.
Oh
So
my
as
gosh.
much, yeah, right?
Yes, because I know as a listener, if
Yes.
I try so hard to hear you, listen to you,
Yeah.
and I can't
You lose
get
them.
you,
They'll
I'm
switch off.
done. Like five
People switch
minutes
off.
is tops.
100%. So part of the process and part of the research before we reach out to a guest is I'll go on and see, do they have any YouTube videos where I can see them present? Have they done a TED talk? Have they done other podcast interviews? So you can actually hear them speak and how articulate they are and how confident they are. You hear that and you before you even reach out and you start planning who you're going to have on the show.
And I'll tell you, I go after the guests that motivate and inspire me,
Mm-hmm.
that I think, add value. And then I think about what can they, besides like if they inspire me greatly where I'm ready to rise up out of my seat, I go to the mattresses for that guest.
Yeah. Yeah.
I do. I'm very passionate. I mean, that's how I got Tim's story on the podcast. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, other guests that have come on, like JJ Virgin and just so many great, amazing, like you, Chantal. I didn't have
Thank
to go to the mattresses for Chantal because Chantal said she'd already heard my podcast. And
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
I was like, oh, this is awesome. And she was so sweet and nice. I could just tell, well, I know this is me. I'm watching you at the conference and I could just tell how sweet you really were and how
Oh,
genuinely nice you were.
oh, that's gorgeous. Well, I'll tell you a funny story. I first came across you on social media. That's how you popped into my vision even before I listened to the show. And I don't know how we were probably connected through fitness somewhere. But I remember seeing your photo and going, oh my goodness, this woman looks incredible. And so I followed you. I think it must have been on Instagram. So I followed you, and then somehow we got connected up, and then I saw you at Idea World. And if anyone didn't hear the story, I got laryngitis. I could not speak a word. I couldn't even whisper. It was my worst nightmare. And then you reached out. So it was just beautiful. And I love that. I love the power of connecting and what social media allows us to do these days, because who would think that I could sit here in Sydney, Australia at 8 o'clock in the morning and you could be across the other side of the world, and we can spend an hour talking together and hopefully inspiring a couple of other people to also become podcasters. I
Who knows
absolutely
who we're
love that.
inspiring out there, right? It's just the coolest thing. And I remember turning to one of my fellow bloggers and I said, because I had been out, it hurt to sit, guys. It
Yeah.
was only like a few days after I tore my hamstring. And so I had to take a break. So I had gotten up and before you came in. So I didn't get to hear the backstory of why you weren't speaking.
Just
So
because I was very
finally,
quiet that
and you were
day.
gone, and I turned to the girl. I'm like, why didn't she get to talk? I'm like, I wanted to hear what she had to say. I didn't realize you couldn't speak, but I'm like, I already knew who you were.
Yeah.
And so I was waiting to hear all about the things I'm asking you today. So thank you
That's
so
so
much.
funny. Oh, I'm so glad we had the chance to do this. It's been fantastic.
Thank you so much for coming on. I have just a couple more questions because I
Go
know
for
we're at about an hour now.
it. All right.
What are five ways that we can reach out to, or it doesn't have to be five, but just some ways we can reach out to partner with other brands, influencers? And I'm going to kind of make this a dual question. We've gotten great guests, we have great content. We want to reach out to brands and influencers, monetize and market our podcast.
Oh, that is such a good question, because I'm very aware that for a lot of people, podcasting is a passion. They do it as an added value, as I started out as well. And I certainly know that, it's not for everyone to make it. I'm in a very unique position that this is what I do full time now. I mean, I still speak and I consult, but generally this takes up the majority of my time. It represents the majority of my financial income. So in answer to your question, I think the first step that you need to do, if you decide that you want to monetize your podcast or you want to connect with partners so that you are maximizing the reach of your show, the first thing you need to think about is relevance. So who are the people or the brands that are obviously most relevant to you, but not only most relevant, but they need to be in line with your beliefs and your vision and the way that you think about things. And Linda, I'll actually use you as a fantastic example. So as a host of a fitness-based podcast, you would be aligned with brands like supplement brands and fitness clothing brands that you believe in. Like what you need to be so careful of is there's a lot of money out there. And if you start to build a successful podcast, just like if you start to build a successful business or a video series, you will have brands that come to you or that come into your pathway that will want to be associated with you because they see the benefits for themselves. Now, as the influencer of that show, as the host of the podcast, as the host of the video series, you need to be you need to think about who you let into your territory. Because if there is a brand out there that isn't in line with your vision and isn't in line with what you actually believe in, by taking them on just because there's money involved in it,
it waters down your brand.
It is going to do you a disservice in the long run. So that's the first thing I'd say is just be very, I don't want to use the word picky, but just be mindful of who you associate with. And that goes for the people, so the influencers that you associate with or the ambassadors that you have of your show, of your brand, and the businesses that you associate with. That's number one. So once you've kind of identified, let's say a couple of businesses, and this is what we did. When you've identified a couple of businesses that you think, you know what, they are businesses that we believe in, they align with our values of our show, then you want to go out and approach them. Now, I always say you do need to start to build a little bit. It would be very, very hard to go out to someone in day one when you don't have any Libsyn statistics, you don't have any download numbers, you don't have any history, and go out and start to ask for money or start to ask for sponsorship or support.
I would say you don't have to let that limit you either. It's surprising, but it really is about, do they have confidence and trust and believe in you and your brand?
And that's where the difference is, because if you're starting a podcast or a show or a video off the back of an existing brand, so you might have established yourself already, you might be known through your social media channels, you might have an existing community, and then podcasting is your next step, then that's a different story. Because you can go out, do you know what I mean? You can go out and search.
I think that's pretty much what I was already established, and then I started a podcast.
Correct. Whereas if you are a small personal trainer and you're starting from scratch and the first step is just getting your message out to your community, then I would actually suggest that you do that for a little while before you start approaching. And you know what? There are different size businesses and brands all over the world. So you don't have to go huge. I'll give you an example. So a personal trainer that I used to coach, he specializes in teaching people how to get ready for mountain climbing. Very specific. So he teaches them how to trek outdoors, the equipment that they need, all that type of stuff. Now, he doesn't have a podcast, but he has a business. Now, he could very easily have gone to one of the top, let's say, equipment brands in the world, like Anaconda or one of those big brands, and gone to them and say, hey, can you support my business? But he started small. So he went to his local, in Australia, he went to his local equipment supplier, which is like one store, and said, hey, if I give you this information, like a guide on how to get started with mountain climbing, do you think when people come in to buy some equipment, you can recommend them to my business? So that's on a local level. So I want everyone to realize that you don't have to go big straight away. You can start small and start to establish a brand and build in those relationships and then grow as you go. It's
all relationship building for sure.
100%. And, one thing I would always say is always protect yourself. So no matter what size the relationship is, put down the agreement in writing. So even if it's absolute basic and it's like, you're just doing a referral based system, it might not be even any money exchanged in the early days. Just have like a one-pager document that says, this is what you're bringing to the party. So as the media provider, this is what you're going to do. You're going to do a 15-second ad spot, or you're going to promote their product. And then what are they going to do in return? So whether it's a financial arrangement, whatever. So no matter how small the arrangement is, get something in writing early on, because you don't want it to get out of hand later on. And then when you eventually do progress to a stage where there is significant financial input from a sponsor or from a partner, then of course you need to go down the path of having a much larger, more secure contract in place. But just put that practice into place from early on. And to go back to your original question, once, we wanted to be in a position where we started to be established. We started to be able to show some download figures, started to be able to say, well, this is who's supporting the show, or this is who it's going out to. These are the different industry associations. I'll talk about that in a second. Then we felt in a better position to actually go to some of those sponsors. So we're sponsored by MyZone and ABC Financial and Precor and One Fit Stop. And, there's a whole lot of amazing brands that we're now associated with, but that didn't happen straight away.
And I
It
think
happened
being
over.
patient, right? Being patient, because sometimes you approach people to be guests or to sponsor your show, and you're just building that connection. They might not say yes the first time. It's just kind of like when somebody asks you out on a date, you might not say yes the first time. You don't know anything about them. So like you just be patient, because and also it's important how you treat everybody out there, because it's just a small world, right?
Yeah, 100%. I think being patient is really important. I think you need, like any situation, you need to grow their trust. You need to show that. And the other thing that I have to say to everyone is consistency is so important. So I can promise you there are so many podcasts and so many videos that launch out there that just are inconsistent. So they might go out for 6 months and then they'll have a break for a while. Then they might go out for another 3 months and then they'll pull back for a while. Or they might release a show once a week and then they go to fortnightly and then they go to monthly and then they go back to a weekly. Now, that type of inconsistency doesn't look good in the eyes of someone who you're asking to invest. And I will tell
Yeah.
you that one of the biggest benefits that we have had is we have produced a show every single week for 3 years. Every single
That's
week for
great.
3 years.
Yeah, and it shows that the consistency. That's the
Yeah.
same with working out. It's just being consistent. It's not
Yes.
about me, working out 3 hours. It's about just showing up and being consistent.
Yeah, that is a really good analogy. I love that. Yeah. So I hope that kind of helps a little bit in the ways
Well,
of money.
you have been so amazing. What is your biggest dream? What are you hoping to accomplish?
Oh, wow. Amazing question. I guess for me, I want to be able to leave a legacy that I have helped as many fitness professionals as possible become successful business owners. There are very few female business speakers in the fitness industry. So for me, I want to be I want to be that person that people come to learn about business, because I've been in such an amazing position to learn so much. As I said to you right at the beginning, I do have a background in sales and marketing in the media industry, but, there are very few females out there that are traveling the world, that are speaking about business-based topics. And I want to be that go-to person. I want to be able to inspire other women to be able to improve their business skills so that they improve their businesses. I want to be able to inspire personal trainers to be better business owners. I started out 2018, Linda, with with 2 words in my head, and those 2 words were influence, action. And I want to be able to influence action in everything that I do. So that means from a business perspective, to be able to influence people to be better business owners, more successful. But it also means from a fitness perspective. As I mentioned at the very beginning, I still teach group fitness classes. I love teaching spin. That's my absolute favorite class. And I want to be able to influence action of the people in that room to become
Right.
more active and to move more. And whilst fitness as such, like personal training and group fitness, is not my primary thing that I do. It's still an important part of what I do. It's something that I'm personally passionate about. So influencing action is my guiding light. And that's what I will continue to try and follow. And when I release my book next year and when I speak at conferences, it's all about how can I influence action in these people's lives.
That was a great answer. I loved that. And I didn't even have to ask you what your why was because it was
Yeah,
all right there in your
in
dream.
there. It's in there.
I just want to acknowledge you so much for stepping out into a space that isn't the easiest to always be in, but bringing value to all of us out there who need it and standing in the gap for us in a space that I think is kind of like a new frontier, so to speak.
Yeah, that's a
So I
good
just
word.
want to acknowledge you so, so much for being that person.
Well, thank you.
And also, you're just so sweet. I mean, you're just so super nice and sweet. I can't say enough about that. You're just a kind person. I could tell it from the very minute that I saw you in person.
That is such a beautiful thing for you to say, Linda. Thank you. You know what, I learned very early on in life that I don't have time for negativity, and I don't have time for people that bring negativity into my life. So I try and share love as much as I can, because life is too short for anything else.
Yeah, it shines because I could just tell by looking at you. I could just tell what type of friend, the spirit, the sweetness, the positivity was just flowing out, and I could just see it. So, um, I already knew how you were going to be, and you did not disappoint.
Well, I'm glad. I'm glad. Thank you so much for the opportunity to come on to your show, and congratulations on everything that you're doing. I'm sure everyone has checked out your website, but when I went onto your website, I was like, wow, there is so much more here than I ever realized. So congratulations on everything that you're doing and how much you're inspiring other people within our industry as well.
Well, thank you so much. Now for the final part.
Yeah.
What are three simple truths that you could leave with our audience? They can be funny, witty, wise.
I actually wrote these down because I wanted to make sure I got them spot on for you today, Linda. So the first one is that success comes from hard work, not from luck. I think a lot of people, you can get lucky along the way and lucky things can happen, but it's really about putting in the hard yards. It's about, working on yourself constantly, not settling. And yep, take the luck when it comes along the way, but really it's about hard work and it's about consistency. So that's number one. So when you're thinking about becoming successful, when it's something that is important to you, then don't think it's just going to magically appear. Know that you need to invest in yourself in order to get there. So that's number one. Number two is pretty similar, and that is don't expect great results unless you invest in your professional development. I think I said to you during the interview today that I'm an avid learner and an avid listener. I mean, every single day I make sure that there is some form of professional development in what I do. That means listening to a podcast or reading a book or listening to a book. So results come from that. I could very easily turn on the television instead of spending half an hour listening to a book, or I could very easily just do the dishes and not be learning at the same time. But really, those people that you see are the most successful, the ones that you look up to, that you're inspired by. I guarantee you that ongoing learning and self-improvement is part of that process for those people. So I really encourage everyone to do that. And it just makes you so much richer. It's amazing. And so the last thing that I wanted to say with you is that there is nothing more rewarding than doing something that you love, and making an impact in the world and making an impact in other people's lives is more rewarding and more means so much more than any type of financial reward that you can get. So actually having an impact, actually having someone say, wow, you made me fitter, or you made me healthier, you made me understand the benefits of eating well, you made me a better business person, that impact is so much more rewarding than any
Oh,
amount of money you could ever get paid in your life.
yeah.
And
I
you know
mean, we all
what?
started in this business to help people, not to get rich, certainly.
Yeah, but you know what? I didn't know that early on, because when in my first 15 years in media, all I focused on was money. All I focused on was
Oh,
how can I
oh,
earn more
yeah.
money? How can I,
Yes, in a
but
regular, yeah, job, you were
in
probably
a regular
would be.
job, but that's what I love about the fitness industry is we do it for impact. We do it to change lives. And I think that is the most amazing gift that any of us can have. So they were quite a big three, but hopefully you got something out of that.
Well, I just always have believed that if you do what you love, you'll never have to work a day in your life. And that, so I always just kind of like, if I would do it for free because I love it so much, that's the direction I want to head.
Mm.
And so that's kind of how I started into writing. It's, from I wrote for Miss Fitness magazine for years before I wrote my own books. And it's how I started into fitness and it's how I started into podcasting. And I just think getting your feet wet, yes, but jump on in and you'll be surprised at the waves you can make. And I just thank you so much for coming on today, sharing your love, sharing your message. Where can people reach you on social media?
Yeah. So I'm definitely, you'll find me on Instagram most of the time. So it's Chantal Brodrick Fitness. So go Chantal Brodrick Fitness, because there is a Chantal Brodrick. Don't get confused. You'll see Chantal Brodrick Fitness. That's where I'm active all the time. You can have a look at fitnessbusinesspodcast.com. And that's where all of the last 182 shows are. Everyone is more than welcome to reach out to me directly. My email address is chantal@activemgmt.com.au. And the other thing you can do is jump onto YouTube. You can either Google me, so Google my name, or Google YouTube, search for my name or search for Fitness Business Podcast, and you'll find a whole heap of videos on there as
It's
well. So
it's Fit
um,
Bizpiration, right?
it's Fit Bizpiration. That's one of the
Yeah,
things that we
I
do.
love
Yeah,
that.
how
That's
good
an
is
awesome
that? So
title.
yeah, please reach out. I'm so happy to answer any questions on podcasting. If I can assist you, if there's a particular business topic that you want to know about, then please reach out as well, because chances are we've done a show on it at some stage, so I can send you through a link as well. But Linda, I want to say thank you so much. It's just been such a beautiful pleasure and a privilege to be able to talk to you today.
Thank you so much. And thanks everybody for listening to the Sisterhood of Sweat.